Welcome to the MAM Journals. As you can see today, I'm going to be talking about the R1250GS. One of my bikes is in for servicing, and I borrowed this, and I've been out in what was supposed to be April showers but turned out to be torrential rain and standing water, but I've had great fun with the bike. What we're going to be doing today, we're going to do a technical walk round, and anybody who's watched my channel before, you'll know that I've actually got a 1200 GS, and I'll naturally be comparing it to that to give you some idea about how the development has progressed in the last 16 years since I bought mine and 40 odd years since they actually first introduced the bike. So I'll be doing the walk round, and then I'll come back here and give you some conclusions as to how I found the bike and what I think about it. Right, so as we do the walk round, I think I probably better start by telling you the specification of this particular bike. It's a loan bike from the garage, and it's completely loaded to the gunnels. It's got adaptive headlights, engine drag torque control, dynamic ESA, which is suspension, keyless ride, daytime running lights, deluxe headlight, gearbox assistant pro, driving modes pro, comfort package, touring package, dynamic package, exhaust system with chrome, and it's called a triple black. Heated headlight, heated handlebar grips. It's got seat heating, which I'll touch on in a minute. Cruise control and additional headlights. I suspect when you price this all up, it comes to, I'd be amazed if it's less than £18,000. My original 2006 cost £10,000, which in money nowadays is about 15. So that obviously this is a very high spec bike, but certainly there has been some inflation in them, but perhaps not as much as some people like to imagine. So let's just actually start with the engine and the comparisons on them. The bike is now fitted with a 1254cc air and liquid cooled 4-stroke flat twin. It's got a double overhead camshaft, it's got a balancer shaft in it, and it's got what's called variable timing, and they call that engine configuration the shift cam. They actually use the same engine in quite a few bikes. Actually, I think last time I looked around the showroom and I saw 5 bikes which looked like they had the same engine in. There was the R and RS, obviously this, the GS, the Adventure, and the RT. So a pretty well sorted engine. The engine produces 136 brake horsepower, or 100 kilowatts if you prefer it that way, and it produces at 7750. My bike, the 2006 bike, produces about 99 from memory, and that was at 7,000 revs. And this bike is fitted with electronic intake manifold injection. Like previous bikes, it's got power lever fitted on the back, which is that bar there. It's got teller lever at the front, in there, and it's a mono lever, i.e. it's attached on one side and open at this end. If anybody wants to know a bit more about that, then if you go to my previous video, and the link is in the sort of comment section below, then you'll be able to directly link in there, and it will tell you both the story of the development of the bike and what those 3 technical devices do. It's a 6-speed shaft drive. It's got, as I touched on in the specification, it's got a pro shifter on there, which is good. I tried it in a couple of the modes, which I'll touch on in a minute, because I went in, because the weather was bad, I was mostly in road, although I did actually just stick it into dynamic, see what it did to the gear change. I found it, it's quite clunky if you're pressing on a bit, but it was if you rode with a little more empathy, it was definitely smoothed out, and a perfectly smooth clutchless change. And if I wanted to press on, when I went to dynamic, obviously it's changing the engine mode and the ECU control, so it coped a bit better with enthusiasm. Not that I'm a particularly fast rider, because I don't want to give that impression, but I did sort of press on a little bit. In terms of overall performance, it's got 136 horsepower, as I touched on, so it's definitely more powerful than than my bike, and you can feel it in the acceleration. In terms of top speed, it feels about the same, to be honest. Not that, obviously I wouldn't have gone those sort of speeds, but if I had theoretically, then it felt about equal in that regard. Now, one thing this bike is where it differs is this is actually quite a bit heavier than my bike. This is 549 pounds if you think in pounds, but if you think in kilos, it's 249 kilos. While mine, I think it was 225 kilos, so it's 24 kilos heavier, and in pounds that's 495, so it's 54 pounds heavier. It doesn't feel like it when you're riding it, or once you've got up to sort of 5 miles an hour, but it does feel heavier when you're either wheeling it around a garage or when you're just sort of pulling away from junctions or stood at lights. You can definitely feel that extra weight, and I'm guessing it's largely driven by the sort of emissions and the equipment that they put on it, and the fact it's liquid cooled, which obviously increases the weight. Being liquid cooled, it's actually got 2 rads in there. Don't know if I can just show you this one there, and obviously one over there. Whilst mine's actually got an oil cool, it was oil and air cooled. So other things that remain the same. It's got 19-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear. One nice little touch, if I could just see where it is. Yeah, there's one on the wheel there. I quite like the fact they've now put the valve coming out in that way. Just little attention to detail, which is impressive, really. Makes it easier to live with and to work with. Obviously, the theory of mine's got spokes on it, which is more for off-road. Personally, would I want to be taking a 549 pound bike off-road? Not sure that I would. I have done a bit of off-roading in my youth. I used to do a bit of clubman enduro racing, but so my preference would be to take a lighter bike, and I'm sure I've probably inadvertently sworn in church there, and there'll be people who say, well, no, you need to ride them off-road, but each to their own. It's capable of doing off-road. This bike, the dynamic package that I mentioned in the specs in the first place, means you've got an enduro mode on the dynamics, so when you're actually pressing your modes through, which I'm guessing affects both the way the power is delivered and would do some suspensions adjusts, and naturally you'd want a different type of ABS function if you're actually going off-road, because it's quite useful to be able to lock up the back to change direction when you're riding it. One of the things on the bike which we should talk about really is and one of my negatives on this bike, but it's only for me, it's not about the bike that it's a negative, it's the seat height. That's 850 in the low position, which is 33.4 inches. Now, my inside leg is 29 and a bit, so not surprisingly, I am sort of certainly on the ball of my feet, which is fine when you're on level ground, but I do find myself every time I come up to a junction trying to assess what the camber is, because once that thing gets to the tipping point, it would be a job to hold it, and I'm sure that one or two people have had moments in gravel car parks where you can't hold it because it's a big heavy bike, and once it starts going, it's going. It's got lean sensitive ABS, and it's got ESA, as I touched on, which is really electronic suspension adjustment, and it's fabulous, I have to say. I've been riding it in very wet conditions, and I found the handling of it surprisingly good. As I say, I wasn't going what many would consider fast, but I was making progress, let's put it like that. And I found it very short-footed when I was overtaking cars. It was great on the white lines. It's got Anarchy tyres on it, and some people like them and some people don't, but I found them actually gave me perfectly sure-footed grip, even across those dreaded shiny steel man covers in the pouring rain. It was very good, which gives you confidence. This is a bike you could do very long journeys on. Let me just take you up to the dash and talk you through what they've done up there. Right, as you can see, it's got a really clear screen, and I'll say even in quite inclement weather, it was very easy to read. It's with bikes nowadays, they can put so much technology in it, you can't help but all these buttons get very complicated, and they're doing multiple functions. But it is fairly intuitive, and I quickly found out how to sort of turn on the heated grips. There's a button up there, if you can see, so I'll just show what I'm going to do. I'll turn it to there. You can see it goes to grip heating, and then you go here on the toggle. Tells you what you've got there, how many you've got on. I tried various settings. 5 is a full cook, and you can just turn it round. I'm just turning the knob there to change how much you've got. When you've got the setting you want, you just push it in. I'll again show you that movement. You push it in like that, and it sets it at speed at the control level that you set it for. So actually comparatively easy to work. I thought when I got on the bike, seat heating, what is that all about? But 40-50 miles into the journey, I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll turn on the seat heating. It was fantastic. Absolutely made the difference on a wet day. I'm quite amused to get off it, to see your seat steaming away. So clearly it works. In terms of modes, let's just press that button. You can see that now it's come up with dynamic. It's got, it might have a rain mode, I'm not sure if I found that, but it's certainly got road, dynamic and enduro. Let's see if I can press it. There's enduro. That's road. Yeah, so you can see how you flick through there, and you can do that on the go, but in order for it to actually engage, you have to close the throttle, and then it will recognize that it was a conscious decision to make it do it, and it works very nicely. So this one is fitted with the equipment for putting the satellite directional sort of package on it, which I always think is a good thing to have, because as I say, with this bike you can definitely swallow miles on it. I could see people riding for many days and many hundreds of miles each day, and doing so really comfortably, because it's like an armchair to ride, and it's very sure-footed. So very nice bike, very nice look what they've done here. I had to laugh at myself. I've always complained about the old paddle switches which my bike is fitted which for the indicators, and now they've gone to conventional, a bit like Pavlov's dogs. I ended up sort of feeling that I was on a GS, and therefore I had to press a button. So I sounded the horn a few times and went for a button that only I could see, which proves that there's no cure for stupid. But anyway, I think this is a big improvement and really easy to operate. Anyway, let's give you my closing thoughts on the bike. Right, so I said in my introduction that in the end I'd make some concluding comments as to how I felt about the bikes, and if you break it into a logical sequence, in terms of, well, firstly the engine, yes, it's improved its power, and you can definitely feel it when you're riding the bike. In terms of the gearbox, I described in my video on my own bike, the 2006 bike, I described the gearbox as being agricultural, and this is not entirely smoothed out despite the Pro Assist. I would describe it as slightly industrial on occasions, but it's a good gearbox. In terms of handling, yes, they've gone forward a step again. The technology has helped a great deal, and in terms of the ergonomics and the controls on the bike, it's made big steps forward, as you'd expect for a bike that's been developed for 40 odd years. Some people who don't like these bikes occasionally lay the criticism and say, well, people only buy them because of the BMW brand. And whilst I'm sure there's one or two that have done that, the reality is you don't sell hundreds of thousands of bikes. This is one of the best-selling big bikes in the world, and you don't win dozens of Motorcycle Magazine's awards without actually building a bike that is really good. This is a fantastic bike, and if you like this sort of thing, you'd be well advised to have a go on it and see if it actually suits you. So I do hope that you've enjoyed this short video. If you did, perhaps you'd be kind enough to press like, or if you like this style of format of presentation, maybe even subscribe. But regardless of whether you do any of that, what I hope you do is ride safe and stay well.